Alan Matthews. I was born in Hutton, which is just up the road near Brentwood. I went to school at Brentwood, latterly, and I started an apprenticeship in 1952 when I was 16. Went through the sort of normal mechanical bit, through the test departments, through the training centre, where I learned all the machine shop skills and so on. Test, then went to Building 46 on development for a bit. Then I went to Pottery Lane at Broomfield in 1955 to work in radar development, and I did the last 2 years of my apprenticeship there, and then they took me on the staff, and I worked there on various bits of equipment until 1959, when they transferred us all to Baddow and swapped, in fact, with the TV people who were at Baddow, and they went to Broomfield. And then I worked from Baddow for about 12 years. Then I went to Whittle Road, where I became a salesman. As a salesman, I went everywhere in the world, I should think. Ecuador, I flew around Ecuador for 3 weeks in an old Dakota, I remember, all around the mountains. Germany, France, Norway, all the Scandinavian countries and so on. So I had a good old get around with the company and had a wonderful time, actually.
And how long did this wonderful roller coaster ride last for?
46 years. And it was really great fun, actually.
When did you retire or were made redundant?
Both, in fact, in 1998. I was then 62, and the radar company were having difficulty finding work, and they were finding great difficulty finding me anything to do, because I was by then a manager, and so they made 100 of us, in fact, redundant, all the senior technical people, all at the same time.
You must have been really personally heartbroken by all this.
Not really, because instead of doing what I loved doing, which was developing new equipment and doing engineering, I found myself sitting behind a computer just writing requirement specifications on other companies outside the firm. And really the bureaucracy had got quite difficult then, because every spec we wrote had to be reviewed by 6 peers and then go back and be corrected, and it was getting very boring, to be honest.
So you popped your thermometer?
I had, really, yes. And then I retired, and that was that.
Why have you come here to Hall Street today?
Well, because obviously when I first joined the company in 52, the old sort of ambience of the old Marconi company was still very much there. And so what's going on here was sort of work that was done by engineers that I was working with by then, senior engineers, who came from this very early era. And when you work it out, if I was there 46 years, I was there for almost half the time the company is in existence. And this is an early photograph of, in fact, the Baddow site. That was taken in about 1966 or 7.
How did you get hold of all this collection? Personally purloining them or photographing them yourself?
Well, some of them I got from Baddow photographic department, and a lot of it, in fact, is that when they shut down the publicity department at Whittle Road, I walked past there one day and there was a pile of photographs sitting outside, about 4 feet deep and about 10 feet in diameter, and I thought it seems a pity they're throwing all that stuff away. And I raked through it and pulled out bits I thought might be interesting. This one was a huge project that I started work on in about 1958, and it was a project that the company got, the first digital project ever, which was really a groundbreaking project for the company. The Swedish government put out a requirement for a radar system to go with their new Viggen fighter, and lots of companies tried to answer the requirement and couldn't meet the requirement, doing it with analogue techniques as were the fashion then. But 2 of our most brilliant engineers, Arthur Young and Derek Watkins, said we can do it with digital, and nobody really knew what they were talking about. And they set to and designed this incredible air defence system, all based on digital techniques which had never been used before. And we developed it at Baddow, and in fact it was put in 1963, and I had to go out there for about a year to help commission it.
You sound very proud of it.
It was a fantastic project because it was absolutely brand new, and nobody had ever done it before. We had enormous problems making it work, as you might gather, but it was absolutely incredible, and it sort of made me really as an engineer. So we finished that, and I came back from there in about I suppose about 1965. Okay, well, just as a little follow-up to that, I'm trying to remember the name of them now. These are people that were the sort of bosses at Baddow. This chap's called Ian Whitlock, and he was in charge of systems, and in fact ended up being in charge of the development with Hughes Aircraft of the British radar defence display equipment that went all over the country in underground bunkers. This is Roger Shipway. He was another big boss of what's called the Datamation Group at Baddow. He was the only man who had permission to leave his bicycle in between the doors at Baddow. If you go to Baddow, you go up steps, and then there's some lovely doors, and then another set of doors, and he used to cycle in and was sufficiently high up to be able to park his bike in between the doors. This chap, whose name I can't quite remember, but he was a great boffin developing display systems, and this was dear old Len Whittaker, who was my boss for some time. He was a great boffin. He looks like a boffin, doesn't he?
Have they all passed away?
I think Len may still be alive, and he's probably about 96 or something. The others have certainly died now.
Why have you got that photograph?
Well, mainly because in fact there were a great pile of stuff thrown away at Ripple Road, and this is just one of the pictures that was in there. Okay, this group, again I'm trying to look at this back to front, this group are the blokes who developed the Myriad computer. Now what happened was, when we were at Baddow, one of the chaps, Don Beckett, who in fact was quality manager of the company, he's still there, he's still around, a great violinist actually, he was given the job of developing a store for a computer to replace in fact that magnetostrictive delay line I was talking about. And he developed a store, and they didn't know how to test it. So they got Derek Jeffries, which is this guy, to develop some logic to test the store. And he did that, and they joined the lot together and realised that they'd built a computer which nobody had by then, and it was the fastest computer in the world, and that was at Baddow. And so these two guys produced that. So the company decided they'd actually market this thing, and they marketed it, and it was called Myriad, and that is in fact the result of the computer that they marketed, which we sold all over the world.
What did it compute?
Well, anything you wanted, because you could program it to do what you wanted, because it was a computer. But in one case it did, well, one of the things we did with, in fact, the radar systems was that if you tracked an aeroplane on the radar, you could use it to track the aeroplane. Then you could actually put into the computer all the parameters of all your fighters and of the enemy aircraft, and then you could carry out what was called a trial interception. And you could say, can this aeroplane off this airbase get up, intercept and shoot down that enemy one, or not? And you press the button, and we had all the algorithms in there for all the performances of the fighters, and it would do it and say yes it can, or no it can't, or yes you can but you'll lose the pilot because you'll have to bail out because you'll never get it back. And we had all that software which we could put in those things. So that's what the computer was for. Yes, who have we got? We've got Ellis Robinson at the top, and he's alas just died, but he was an absolutely brilliant engineer and a great innovator. He was a great broadband thinker, if you know what I mean, or broad brush thinker, and he thought up all the clever new radar systems that we had, mainly on the transmitter receiver side, but he was an incredibly brilliant man and developed a transmitter called the SR1000, for instance, which was built at Broomfield in 55, 56. The first one had to be sent to Cyprus. They enormous panic to get it going. They put it on the boat and unfortunately dropped it overboard in shipping it to Cyprus, so it was never used. This is Fred Kime, who was my old boss, and he was the systems manager when I worked there. He's still alive. He's 93 and lives in Gallywood, and in fact he's going to the Marconi Vets dinner with us in a week or two's time. This is John Crispin, and John was a very sharp salesman indeed, who wore very sharp suits and a black cloak with a red silk lining, which he used to zoom around the world in. And he was friendly with all sorts of very high-powered kings and God knows what in the Far East. This gentleman, I'm afraid I don't know. Didn't know. I don't know what he was. He was one of the many commercial managers in the company, I think. Right, starting up the top here, this is Graham Tickle. He was an engineer at Baddow and worked on the Green Ginger project. And in fact went to India with it and came back again. He's still around in Great Baddow. This is Bruce Neal, which is Chris's father. Bruce was a real character. I don't know whether you want any anecdotes about him. Well, the sort of thing that Bruce did was, at one occasion, they sent round an edict saying the company was using far too much paper and there was to be paper economy. So they got a chap who was very good at drawing cartoons to produce a poster with cartoons on it, and this was sent round to all the managers to put up on their notice boards to tell people to save paper, and they wanted suggestions as to how to do it. And Bruce, being Bruce, took the poster, cut it up into small pieces, put a paper clip through the corner, sent it back and said, "This will make an excellent scrapbook and this is an excellent way of saving paper," and sent it back to the people who'd sent it out. And that was the sort of thing that Bruce used to do. And on the other one was his filing system. He always had a big stack of paper, and you'd go and see him and say, "I sent you a memo, Bruce." "Oh really?" he'd say. "When was that?" "Oh, about a fortnight ago." And he'd go, "It'll be about there." Then he'd come in and find your memo in there, and then after a month, apparently he used to turn it upside down, take the top 2/3 off and put it in the waste paper bin. He'd say nobody was interested in that anymore, turn it back up the other way again. And that was Bruce's filing system. Anyway, that was the sort of guy he was. This gentleman here is Colin Latham, another incredibly brilliant engineer, who again was very high up in the company in the end. And I remember I was at Bushy Hill in 1967 trying to get something ready for the Farnborough Air Show, and he came up to see how we were getting on, and my wife had come up to pick me up and broken the fan belt on a Mini, and Colin came up and I said, "I've got a problem though, Colin, because my wife's here and her car's broken down." "Oh, what's wrong with it?" he said. I said, "Oh, fan belt's broken." He said, "Is there a spare one?" I said, "Oh yeah, there's a spare one in the boot." So he said, "Fine, you fix the radar, I'll fix the Mini. I can't fix the radar anymore." And he went under the car and put the new fan belt on for me. So he was a wonderful man. I didn't know this gentleman, and I didn't know this gentleman. They're both commercial guys, I think. Well, this was at Riddle Road.
I think I recognise Prince Charles.
The old Crompton's place, yes. And Prince Charles came round and saw us. And so that's John Sutherland, the then managing director of Radar. That's Charles. That's HNC Ellis Robinson, the chief engineer.
And what are they showing off?
To be honest, I don't know. They're probably showing off something they thought Charles might understand. I don't know what it was.
Do you remember the visit?
Yes, I was there.
But not in the photo?
Not in the photo. Yeah, I was there. But.
So what did they do for Charles? Did they paint the coal white? What special arrangements would they have made for his visit, or was it just...
No, he just rolled up in the car, I think, with a couple of hit men, I suppose, and they walked him round.